Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Sean, and I'm delighted you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today I'm joined by Yossi Run, MVP, who will cover Understanding Power Platform Certificates, how to prepare, train, and pass certification exams. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar. Our handle is @ESPC_community, and our hashtag is #ESPC25. Tweet us, tag us, and tell us what you learned. Don't forget to check out our Learning Hub, which is updated with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. You can access and view the Learning Hub by visiting our website, sharepointeurope.com, and clicking the Content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, Rapid Development with YAML and Components in Power Apps, with Charles Sexton, MVP. This webinar will take place Wednesday, 29th of January, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. CET. For more information on this webinar, please check out www.sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars. Elevate your Microsoft Power Platform skills at the European Power Platform Conference in Vienna on 16 to 19 June 2025. Power Platform Week attendees get €150 off tickets with code Power Platform Week, valid until February 7th. Learn the latest in Power Apps, Power Automate, and Dynamics 365 while connecting with experts and peers. Scan the QR code to register now or visit sharepointeurope.com/European Power Platform Conference. Don't miss out our 2-for-1 sale for FabCon Europe, available February 5th only. Register now to get 2 participants for the price of 1. More perspectives, more networking, and more opportunities. Act fast. This offer is for 1 day only at www.sharepointeurope.com/FabCon Europe 2-for-1 deal. Ready to sharpen your skills or make the career-defining move? Join us at ESPC 25 to learn from 100 plus experts across 120 plus sessions, covering everything you need to stay ahead in Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, and Copilot. Get your tickets at www.sharepointeurope.com/pricing. As always, if you have any questions at any stage, please feel free to type in the questions box and Yossi will get to them during the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you'll be notified by email when it's available. And now, I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Yossi. Hello, Yossi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. And
hear you perfectly.
Let me share my screen as well.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Alrighty. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Let's talk about certifications. So my main goal is definitely to share the information and my experience on Microsoft certifications. I will also cover the Power Platform certifications on how to prepare, how to train, how to learn, and eventually how to pass certification exams. If you have any questions, I believe you have the Q&A. Feel free to utilize that one or reach out to me after the webinar. Just briefly about me, if we haven't met before, I got online in 1983, roughly. At the time, it was more about being offline because the modems of that time were quite expensive and calling to different network systems was too expensive for my parents. So eventually in about 1989, I got my own modem. And since then, I think I've been mostly connected. My first real IT-related memory is also from 1982, 1983 on a Commodore VIC-20. If anybody here has ever used that one, it had a fantastic programming language called BASIC, obviously, and you could do fun little programs on that one. And I knew then at the age of 5 that probably this IT thing might be something I need to look into at a later age. Since COVID, I figured that since we're all stuck at home, I should probably take care of my physical fitness as well. So I built a gym at home. So if you don't see me online, then I'm offline, fully disconnected. trying to move some weights, and if I'm not learning something for an upcoming exam, then I'm probably doing better at the gym because I'm so frustrated on that one. Today, let's talk about Microsoft certifications overall, and then also let's have a look at the Power Platform certifications. I do have a lot of guidance in here. I have opinions on this one as well. And I'm also happy to share some of the failures that I've had over the years with certifications. Preparing, training, studying, doing labs, different approaches in here. So I will outline the things that I feel work the best, especially if you know you have a deadline, and by that time you should have one or more exams completed. So without further ado, let's start with the Microsoft certification landscape. And I do have links later on for all of these that you're seeing. So if you want to dig further, you can do that one. So when we get started with the Microsoft certification landscape, this is a screenshot from yesterday, so should be relatively fresh. But now that everything is moving so fast, I should always double check in the morning that nothing has evolved since last night. So you have your fundamental exams, you have your role-based exams, and then you have your specialty exams. For fundamentals, I always say they are more about being fun than being fundamentals, relatively easy, and perhaps designed to give you a taste of the different aspects, different capabilities of a given platform or a set of services. Azure Fundamentals, I recall doing this once, I think it was 25 questions, and most of those were non-technical. So the whole point is to expose you to Azure, to let you understand a little bit more. What should I know that I don't know yet if I choose to go further with the exams? And then obviously for AI and data, there's separate fundamentals. For Microsoft 365, obviously, we do have the fundamentals mostly on the productivity side on that aspect, no security, no management in that sense. And then Dynamics has a couple of different fundamentals, and Power Platform has its own fundamentals, as well as security and everything else. My advice typically to my colleagues or somebody asking for opinions on this, my advice typically is that if you've already been working in the field, if you already know the basics, skip the fundamentals. Not because they're bad, but they are probably not teaching you a lot anymore. They are really the obvious basics of a given platform. But then when you get started more on the role-based ones, there's a lot to choose from. There's a couple of dependencies in here. As an example, if you'd like to complete the Azure Solutions Architect Expert, which is the highest level in terms of Azure for IT pros and architects, then you would need to first complete the Azure Admin Associate, which is more hands-on, and the solutions architect is more of a design focused with different scenarios, but it's less hands-on because the assumption and expectation is that you've already completed AZ-104, the Azure Admin Associate. I've tried to memorize all of the different exam numbers. So if at times I will be talking about PL200 or SC100, bear in mind that I am referring to these exams in here. Then additionally in here, developers have their own Azure Dev Associate and DevOps Engineer Expert. The same goes in here. The AZ400, if you want to complete this, you have to have something completed before that one. Obviously, you can reverse the order, but you would not be achieving the expert exam unless you complete the mandatory exams before that one. For security, there's been a lot of evolvement in the last couple of years. I can very much recommend this as well. And for Power Platform, it's been fairly static now for a couple of years. Let's talk about this in a second. So you don't have to do all of this. That's not the point. One reason being that would take too much of your time. The second reason would be that once you complete these, after a year or two, you have to renew these. So renewal is easier. Let's talk about that too in a moment, but it will take a bit of your time. And if you were to complete all of these, and I've met people who have done all of these, I do admire them. The challenge is then that when you have to renew these, perhaps you haven't been working with Dynamics sales functional consultant related stuff at all. And now when it's time to renew, you really don't have that capability and you have to ramp up back to those basics in order to pass that renewal exam at the same time. For me, my certification journey started in 1997. I recall I was 19 or 20 years old at the time, and my then employer said that, Jussi, there are these things called the Microsoft exams, like MCSE at the time and MCSE plus I, so Microsoft Certified Solutions Engineer. The plus I was for internet because it was a new thing at the time. And I figured, well, let me do a couple of those. And my very first exam, I recall it was 97 or 96, was for Windows NT4 server on IIS, which was the web server at the time. A bit of development, a bit of networking, a bit of this, a bit of that. And I failed on that first exam, and I did study a lot. Because back then, if you wanted to study for something like this, you had physical books for it. I know we don't really have physical books anymore. At the time, we did have those. And it was about 900 pages. I read that through 3 times. And I figured, I know everything about this. There's no way I can fail. I go to the exam and I failed. The reason that I suspect now why I failed is not that I didn't know the stuff. I knew the stuff by heart. But at the time, a lot of the exams were simulated. So they would give you a simulated environment of a control panel in Windows NT4 server of the web server, for example. And if somebody recalls back to those times, those were MMC snap-ins at the time. And they would ask you, how do you configure an additional IP address on this website? And you had to click through that simulated interface. And I knew that. I was like, this is super easy. Let me just click OK. And that's where I failed. I should have clicked apply first, then OK. So the simulated one was expecting me to hit apply to ensure those changes would be committed before clicking OK. And I never did because I figured I know what I'm doing. I'll just click OK. That's why I failed. So next week I went again and I did pass on that one. And that set me on a journey of doing Microsoft certification exams and other exams on the side while working full time. In 2003, I wanted to achieve the Microsoft Certified Trainer exam. At the time, I did need to pass a sample delivery of a Microsoft training course that was graded. And if I did adequately, then I would get the MCT certification, allowing me to deliver trainings with Microsoft materials. And it was very different back then. It's still a lot of fun, but it's vastly different now that we're mostly all remote. And the speed of innovation, the speed of new releases on aspects makes it a little bit more demanding these days if you want to deliver trainings as well. And then I figured, let me do everything. Let me do all Windows, let me do all development, all security certifications that Microsoft had. And Microsoft kept retiring a bunch of certifications each year. So you would complete something on January, only in December to get an email that, well, this is not valid anymore. Thanks for doing it, but it doesn't count in anything anymore. And then in 2008, roughly, Microsoft released the Microsoft Certified Master degree or exams as well, the MCM. And that was probably the toughest exam I had done up until then and for a number of years after that one. It was grueling. It was very time consuming. I think I spent about nine months in total on the MCM, and we spent about 3 weeks in Redmond, 6 days a week on lectures and labs and exams and whatnot. A lot of fun, perhaps a little bit too challenging to a lot of people, myself included. That was retired around 2013. And since then, we've mostly focused on the expert level certification. So you have the fundamentals, you have the role-based ones, and some of the role-based ones are expert grade, requiring more in-depth knowledge on aspects. So why should you do certifications then? Quite often somebody poses this question to me and says, why should I spend hours and hours of my time learning a new skill and better succeeding in my work? And I'm like, well, you sort of self-answered that question as well. But for me personally, I want to study, I want to do self-studying, I want to attend classrooms, I want to attend webinars, I want to listen to podcasts in order to learn new skills. Because for me, that allows me to progress in my thinking, acquire new skills, progress in my career as well. So I feel the certifications are the best possible way to learn new skills and having more fun on whatever you choose to do in life. Sometimes there's a requirement for Microsoft partner programs. Companies who are part of the Microsoft partner program have requirements, both commercial and both skills-based. And people completing certifications can bundle those up through their employer and post those as evidence to Microsoft saying, we are capable of working at this level on this given platform. And the partner company obviously gets some benefits, but you personally also gain the skills and the knowledge and perhaps the certainty of the future for upcoming projects and adventures. Base skills, I feel, when something new becomes available a couple of years ago, everybody started talking about generative AI and security at the same time. I feel that some of the exams are now leaning more on those. So if you haven't been working on Power Platform or if you haven't been working in security, then achieving a certification gives you a base skill for those new platforms, which you can then build on top of through projects, through engagements in learning additional skills beyond the certifications. And for me personally, I often work in the capacity of an architect or a principal architect with customers. And I feel I need to have enough knowledge about everything so that I can properly succeed in those projects. Not a lot of projects are fiercely focused on just one thing. It might be an Azure deployment, it might be something to do with security, it might be something to do with Power Platform. But often the constraints of that project are not just for that specific thing that you happen to know. There will be side streams, dependencies, people coming to you asking about related things that they're struggling with. And if you can help them out, and if you have the knowledge, a certification exam is a pretty good way in achieving that sort of base knowledge on things you don't get to work with every day. And if you choose to teach others, if you choose to mentor others, if you choose to deliver trainings, you have to have the exams completed before you can train on those. And if you work remotely from home, like I do, and if you get bored during lunch breaks, nothing is more fun. Well, maybe some things, but nothing almost is more fun than doing certification exams during lunch breaks. So about the exams, usually 2 hours. So those will be timed. And if English is not your first language, then you can request for an additional 30 minutes added on top of the exam, because typically you have to read the exam questions in English, then you have to translate that in your head to your native language. For me, that would be Finnish. And then when you're choosing the response for any question in the exam, then you translate back in your head back to English. And it gives you a little bit of a penalty in doing those exams. So typically, you would be wise to ask for that extra 30 minutes. There's the link to the form that you have to fill out and send off. Typically, for the role-based and the fundamentals, majority of the questions are multiple choice. So there might be question, and it might be quite lengthy. It might have some requirements that you have to also achieve. And then you have multiple answer choices from A to G or A to D. And then you choose often one, or it might imply choose all that are relevant, or choose 2 or more, or choose 3 out of 6. So just be careful when you're selecting those that you follow up exactly on what the question is asking you to do. One of the things that I typically do, since you're allowed to have note-taking tools, so a pen and a paper at the exam, what I typically do is I jot down the question number, and if the question has options from A to D, I just write A, B, C, D on the paper, question number 5, A, B, C, D, and then I'm reading through the options. Well, it's definitely not B. I cross over B on the paper. It's definitely not C. I cross over C. Now I know I have to choose between A and D. It's much easier mentally in selecting between 2 than selecting between 4 or 5 or 6 options. Expert exams are typically do have case studies. The case studies are quite lengthy, often 5 to 10 pages, explaining an imaginary company with a situation. And then once you read that case study, then you have questions pinpointing to different aspects of that one. What I do with those, I never bother to read the case study. I go straight to the question. Oh, they're asking about backup. Then I go back to the case study. Let's see, backup. Oh, they're talking about disaster recovery. This probably has to do with backup. So obviously you have to skim through the case study, but you don't really have to spend 30 minutes first reading it, because it's really hard to keep all of that in your head while juggling with the questions on the other side. You can do exams remotely from home or at a physical test center. For me, the problem of doing tests at home is my small home office where I'm sitting now. I have 3 displays. So there's one there, one in here. If I log into the test center website and say, I'd like to do this, somebody will be remotely monitoring my exam taking. They will ask me to show with the web camera through my work area under the desk. Do you have doors? Do you have windows? Then they see my 3 displays. Hold on, that cannot go. You could have something extra on one of the displays that you're not supposed to be doing. Can you remove the displays from your table? And if you're taking the test at 6:30 in the morning before the kids wake up, yeah, I really can't. So for me, where I usually go to do the exams, if I do those remotely, and I know this is very Finnish, I go to the sauna. No windows, nobody else in there, no additional displays, just me and my laptop. Do not turn on the sauna. It's warm enough as it is. But from there, I've always passed my exams. There's no distractions at all.
Yossi, just a question came in there.
Yeah.
That's okay. Which are the best resources for Power Platform certifications? Next, is it best to take PL 300 after getting PL 900?
I would say that's a good question. I would say take PL 200 next if you've done PL 900, but this obviously depends a little bit on what your goals are. So let me unpack this a little bit with this short diagram. So obviously you have to identify your certification path. So I showed you all the certifications. There's no point in just randomly picking one. If you don't work with Dynamics 365, there really isn't any point to spend time on learning a lot of the in-depth stuff that you would need to know. And let's have a look at the same diagram in a second with the actual exams. Do decide if you want to do self-study, if you want to attend a classroom training to learn that. They are typically 3 to 5 days. I've done a lot of classroom training as an attendee, as a student, but I've also delivered a lot of classroom trainings. The upside of that is that you give yourself the time to learn. You go to the classroom, you spend 8 hours there, you're really focusing on that one. With self-study, you have to know yourself well enough. Can you do self-study while you're working? Meaning, can you carve out 2 hours of your time during the day to actually study? But if you open Instagram to watch reels, you're not really learning anything. Well, maybe something, but not the relevant stuff. And if you cannot study during the day, can you have time in the morning or in the evening to do self-study, and do you have the energy for that one? So classroom typically yields better results, but there's often a cost. There's a bit of travel or commute required, and you need to have the time away from work at the same time. Do allocate the time, regardless if you do classroom or self-study, allocate the time to give yourself time to learn. I always check the labs first, meaning that if I'm aiming for a Power Platform functional consultant exam, the PL200, I check what they're going to be asking me. I check what the labs are. I check the requirements. I check the bullet point by bullet point requirements so that I know, do I have any weak areas? If I feel super strong about everything, I will still spend a bit of time learning, but then I'll just schedule the exam and try it out. I do a lot of prototyping. I build a lot of sandbox environment. I build a lot of labs. I try to learn a lot by doing. For me, that's typically a better approach than listening endlessly when somebody else is telling me how to do something. I need to have that hand-mouse coordination to my brain in order to actually ingest something. So I might typically attend a shorter learning session, maybe from Microsoft or from a training partner, but then I really need to get building quite quickly. And the reason for scheduling the exam is that that gives you a deadline. Schedule the exam 2 weeks from now, then you know you have to do something before that. But if you attend a classroom training for 5 days today, and then you schedule the exam for August, you're not going to be passing, because 6 months later, you might not have had the time to actually utilize those skills that you did learn. And typically this allows you to pass the exam. On labs, just briefly, what I always try to do with the labs, because they are associated typically with learning, is to try to find the essence of the lab. Are you just doing the labs like mechanically? Well, they ask me to do this, so I'm just clicking through the guidance. Then when you're done after 2 hours, you have no idea what you even did, because you didn't really care to think. You just clicked through that because you felt it was required. So before I do any labs, I skim through what's the intent of the lab. What do I have to learn through this lab? And typically you can see there's bits and pieces that you have to learn, and everything else is decoration around the lab. So this gives you the option that you don't have to do the lab. You can do the exercises that are part of the lab, but you don't have to mechanically go through the lab with 75 different tasks. That will take you 3 hours. Instead, the whole thing might probably take 10 minutes for you to learn. For me, I never use any pre-built lab images, environments, subscriptions, or anything like this. Since I try to look what they're asking me to do in the lab, I utilize my own existing tenants and environments. And if the lab is asking me to spin up a Windows 11, install this and that, I can do that myself. And if it's asking me to build something in Dataverse, I'll simply see what sort of data they expect me to push into Dataverse. And then I can just do that manually with my own data. Because when it's my own data, it's more meaningful for me. If something fails, I already sort of have an inkling of an idea. What should I fix? But if it's somebody else's data and you're just doing it, something fails, you really don't have an idea what to do next. You're just stuck. So try to have the capability of building your own small sandboxes. Use trial environments, use the demo environments, use your own environment. Probably don't use your corporate environment, because typically you don't have enough permissions in there, and typically there's a lot of other stuff at play there that you cannot modify, and it might mess up with your intent. Microsoft also has a lot of learning pods. They are all free, and there's a vast collection of those. You can see the link in there. And I usually use these to just dip my toes into new platforms. If there's a new capability in Power Platform that I don't know that well, back in the day it was AI Builder, I figured, okay, I need to look into AI Builder. So I can just go and click around. But I went to the learning pods to find something on AI Builder. And once I found that, I could sort of follow on the guidance in there. and still utilize my own environment. And it was holding my hand at the same time to let me build something that works, and then I can connect the dots from start to end to understand what's happening in here. A lot of the learning parts are quite short, 35 minutes, 1 hour, but there are lengthier ones as well. So for example, if you plan on doing the Power Platform fundamentals, the PL900, I recall that's about 8.5 hours of studying. The content is free, the exercises are free, the labs are available from there. You just have to sit down and give it the time. If you're a fast reader or if you can learn rapidly, it won't take you 8.5 hours. It will probably take you 5 hours. Or if you divide that to a duration of multiple weeks, it might take you 20 hours, but you're sort of redoing a lot of the stuff to get back on track where you left off last week. So which one should you do when we look at the context of Power Platform? And there's quite a bit of different certification exams for Power Platform. You could do them all. Why not? If you have the time, if you have the energy, if you have the funding to pay for the exams. So a typical exam is about $165 on the list price. Often Microsoft partner companies might have discount vouchers, so ask for those if possible. And sometimes during major events, Microsoft is offering bundles like 2 for 1 or 1 free retry if you fail on the first go and similar. But roughly $165 and or euros would be the typical cost associated with one exam try. For me, I always recommend if you want really to get started with Power Platform, start with the basic PL200. So you don't have to do PL900, the fundamentals at all. You can if you like, but the PL200 covers everything in PL900. And this is typically a 3 to 4 day classroom training. There's quite a bit of labs in there, but you can self-study this in a couple of weeks, I would say. Obviously, not studying 8 hours a day, but let's say if you can allocate 90 minutes up to 2 hours per weekday or do a couple of Sunday afternoons, I'd say roughly 2 weeks is enough for this one. From there, if you pass this one, if you are developer oriented, continue with PL400, so to here. But if you're not a dev, then you have the option to continue to the architect expert one. If you feel that is too challenging, there's quite a bit of stuff in there. You also have the option to go to the RPA, meaning Power Automate desktop related stuff. This is a little bit easier than PL400, and PL600 is probably the one with the most content-wise requirements, but it doesn't go super deep into each different aspect because those are already tackled in PL200 and PL400. PL300 was mentioned as well. It's not strictly part of this one, but you could also do that after PL200. Typically what I see people here in the Nordics doing, they typically do PL200 first, then they start studying for PL600, either commit on that one or tackle PL400 first and then go for PL600. You don't have to do all of these, but at least the bare minimum would be PL200 for everybody working with Power Platform.
Yossi, we have 4 questions in, if that's okay. So are there any free exams you can take?
Are there any free exams? So the default exams do require you to pay for those. There are sample exercises in the learning parts that you could take, but I'm not aware that they would have a single place with everything. But for example, for the PL900, there's an exercise portion that has a bunch of questions, and it will also show you the correct answers and how well did you do. There are also third parties that sell you the exam test software. So they allow you to train for the exam itself, but there's also typically a cost associated. I couldn't tell how much. I don't typically use them myself, but I do know a lot of people like to use those because they allow you to go through a wider pool of questions to understand the problem areas. What I would recommend is have a look at the labs, have a look at the requirements, go through the labs. Once you get the hang of it, once you do the labs and you're like, well, I get this, I know how this works now, then just go and do the exam. You don't need anything after that one. You have the skills already for that one.
Perfect. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get the other questions at the end, will we?
Yep,
Or,
sure.
Yeah, perfect.
And there, I mentioned the Microsoft Partner Programs, and there's been quite a big of transformation in there in the last couple of years. And what they're now called for partner companies, they're called Microsoft Solutions Partner Designations. This doesn't tell me anything. It simply means this is a competency for a given company. And there are, just counting, 6 different competencies: biz apps, data and AI, digital and app innovation, infra, modern work, and security. And for each one of these, you have a subset of requirements. Here's an example. You need to provide reference proof that your company, you yourself or somebody in the company, has been working with real live customers on that given technology. And once you add that proof, you start gaining points. For example, net new customer references, I think you get 4 points per customer and up to 20 points you can gain. Then you have different levels of requirements for personal certifications, up to 40 points typically, and each one of these yields, I think 5 or 6 points or 6.6. It's something weirdly specific. For us, for example, we had 6 certified individuals passing some of the required certification exams. So if you choose to aim for business applications competency or designation, that one might have a requirement of 6 individual people passing PL200 or PL300 or PL600 as an example. And then maybe you have 2 people do PL200, 3 people do PL400, and 1 person do PL600. And that adds up to 6 individual certified individuals yielding 40 points. And what you need 70 points out of 100 for a designation to be reached. So if you get 71 points, great, same result. But if you get 70 points and something changes, perhaps a certification expires, then you drop down on the points and you lose that designation again. Then there's the next level from these, the partner specializations, much more demanding. Not to say the designations are trivial, but for specializations, you need more proof that you are working with specific customers, with specific solutions, with specific targets. So the commercial aspect, but then also the certification requirements are a little bit more strict. So here's an example. I recall this was for the business application specialization. You have to have 5 individuals, all of them have to pass PL200, plus 2 people have to pass PL400, plus 1 person has to pass PL600. So this can be the same or different people. So at a bare minimum, you would have 5 individuals passing a total of 8 certification exams, or you might have 8 individuals passing a total of 8 exams. If you had 15 people, great, but you don't get anything extra in here. You just have to meet this minimum. And then when the commercial requirements are met and this one is met, then you're good to go with this one. It's valid for a year. Then next year they might change something and you have to again spend a bit of time achieving those requirements. Let's have a quick look at the exams, the labs, the preparation, everything else. Let me just crank up the font size. So Microsoft Learn, learn.microsoft.com. This one, once you sign in with your account, gives you a quick way for you to go and check what do I actually have? So when you go to credentials in here, this gives you a list of the certifications that you've done. And you can see from my list, I have some certifications, these two, that I have to renew. So as an example, the cybersecurity architect expert, I earned that in late June 2022, and it was valid for 2 years. And now I have to renew that before July 1st, 2025. So if I click on renewing here, it will give me the details of the exam and say I have 153 days to complete this one. If I click on take the renewal assessment, it will go straight to the exam. So the renewal exams are a little bit easier. They are not monitored, so nobody's watching you breathe and drink coffee over the webcam like in a real exam. So this one you can do at your own pace. The renewal doesn't cost you anything. If you fail, you can retry immediately. If you fail again, I recall you get a 24-hour freeze before you can retry for the third time. So in that sense, you can try the renewal immediately. If you fail, you know which areas you're weak on, you study more on those, then you do this again and you can pass. So going back just one page, and hopefully this is loading. A little bit slow, let's reload the page. No, let me go through from here. Super slow today. Alrighty, so back to credentials. From credentials, you can also see the applied skills. So if you did any of the additional free exams from Microsoft Learn, the exercises part of the learning parts, those would be shown here as well. I haven't really bothered with these too much myself, mostly because these are fairly tiny and I often want to grasp a larger concept instead of just one small thing. And then from achievements, obviously you can see what sort of badges you've made. And from transcript, this might be something your employer, or if you're bidding on a project, they might be asking that you have proof that you've actually done all of these. So you can see from here, I've got 28 certifications that are retired, still visible on my transcript, but of no relevance in that sense. And about 40 active ones. So come January next year, I will get a bunch of those that I have to renew again, because depending when I did those, the deadline is typically beginning of the year or halfway through the year as well. So now if I want to do an exam, let's do Microsoft PL200. I will go to here. I can see what I should be familiar with. There's an exam prep video, but there's also a study guide. So let's have a quick look at the study guide. And from here, I can see the skills measured since December. And I usually read this through to understand, do I know how to configure Dataverse? Do I know how to create apps and so on? And once I've checked this through, okay, I'm pretty confident I can do this. Going back to here, I can select my location, Finland, 126 euro, slight discount, nice. United States there, 165. Let's try Germany. They're cost conscious as well. Perhaps Ireland. It's the same roughly through the whole region. So let me go back to Finland, schedule the exam. It will ask some details about me. I don't want to give them now, so let me just do something like this. I am not based in Lapland, but let's claim I'm in Lapland because it's cold and they have snow in there. Finland, and my phone number, that looks like a solid one. I can give my real email. So now when you submit through this one, you don't have to pay immediately, but then you're taken to a selection. Do I want to do this in a test center? Do I want to do this online? Online, please. I actively dislike meeting people, so online is great. I can stay at home. And from here, yes. I trust blindly. They're not asking for my kidney or one of my kids. Let's select all of these here. Yes, 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 yes. There we go, and agree. And English, not Japanese. I'm not that well versed in Japanese. And time zone, yes, this is correct. And now I get to choose the slot. When would I like to do it? So it's the 29th today. Let's do one tomorrow. A word of advice, if you click on explore more times, they are giving you some nice times in here. 5:15, I've tried that once. The problem is that you have to sign in at 4:45, so 30 minutes prior to do the online registration and proof of government identity and all of this. Then you book the appointment, and from here, I think they will be asking for my credit card. And there we go. You can also add a practice test. This is what I mentioned before. So the price is €74 or about $99. This allows you to practice exams, not exactly with the same questions, but something fairly relevant for that one. And as an MCT, it seems I do get a slight discount on this one. So I'm happy for this, but you can also see the subtotal 126 would be the real price you would pay for the exam. And if you pass, great. If you fail, then you have to study more and retry. Typically, you have to pay the same price as well. One last bit on the labs that I mentioned. PL200 as an example. What I did, I searched for PL200 GitHub because typically the labs you can find from here. And you can see the instructions for the labs in here. So as an example for PL200, let's pick up security roles lab. You can see from here what the requirements are, and then you actually have the actual lab in here. So you don't really need anything else besides the guidance on the lab. They're asking you to check a security role and then modify something from a custom table with the role, add privileges. So obviously you can just skim through this and try to figure out how it works. But if this is all new to you, definitely spend the time in doing this as well. So I already discussed a little bit about this PL200 to PL600, but my recommendation after that one, if you work in any capacity as an architect, is to tackle the AZ104. This was the Azure admin. AZ305, this was the expert architect grade 1. So both of these super useful, a bit challenging, but after PL600, a lot of things are lock in place once you learn also the Azure related aspects that might affect Power Platform as well. If you want more security focused ones, do the PL200 and 600, perhaps the 400 devs, and then start with the SC200, which is great. It gives you the basics of security in the cloud. And then there's the Azure specific security aspect, which affects PL600 as well. And then SC300 on incident management and identities. And the last one is the cybersecurity architect one. So this is sort of a sibling to PL600 and AZ305, which is the Azure architect expert. So completing SC100, PL600, and AZ305, you would have all the main expert level architect certifications. It's not a lot of exams, but these one have a lot of content as well. So you have to study, you have to do the labs as well. For Microsoft Certified Trainer, if anybody's thinking of that one, you do need an associate or expert level certification as the base. And then you need to do the proof of instruction skills. So you have to attend a classroom course where you will be taught how to deliver trainings, and then you possibly need to provide proof that you've actually delivered something. There's a yearly renewal for this one, and sometimes some of the certification requirements will also be updated as well. A few topics that I might have forgotten to talk about previously. Oftentimes people might be asking, how long will it take for me to complete something? If you begin today, you want to complete PL200, which is the functional consultant on Power Platform, how long from today? It's a Wednesday, end of January. How long until I have this done? I would say before end of February, this would be completed. Have a look at the requirements, have a look at the learning parts, start doing the labs today. You don't have to wait until some given date and then book the exam for end of February. You're good to go. AZ-104, the Azure IT Pro related stuff, there's a little bit more moving parts in there. So I would say before mid-March or before March, meaning about 6 to 8 weeks in total for preparing for this one. And that's probably the more challenging ones. PL 400 and 600, I would say 4 to 6 weeks to prep while you work on the side, a few hours here, a few hours there. That's it. Renewals, we already talked about those, so those are free. If you do a lot of exams, prepare to allocate the time next year or 2 years from now to do the renewals. They give you 6 months to do the renewals. People often leave that on the last day. Don't do that. Perhaps there's a maintenance break on the platform. You cannot complete that in time. You lose the certification. You have to do it all over again. So typically what I try to do, renewals, I try to do those on the first week I get the reminder email. So you saw I have 2 in the pipeline. I haven't done those. I will do those tonight. Can you ask more money from your boss? Hopefully. People that I work with, if they came to me and said, Jussi, I did PL 200, can I get more salary? I would probably say, well, no, because if you work in the capacity of a Power Platform consultant or architect, I would expect this to be a bare minimum for you. Just pass the basic exams. I would perhaps sponsor the effort, give you free time off or give you a one-time bonus for completing that, but perhaps it shouldn't be something that immediately raises your salary because it doesn't automatically translate to more work or better daily rates or better results through your projects. And lastly, the end-to-end success plan. Essentials, so forget the fundamentals, go straight to the role-based ones, do the labs. That's the best way to learn, and because those are very closely aligned with the actual exams. Do read on the theory as well, but Microsoft Learn has everything you need. One small trick that I often do, and I know I have just 30 seconds to show that for you. If I go to learn.microsoft.com and I select from here something that is of interest to me, Power Platform, and I need to learn more about Copilot Studio. I go to here, I pick what is Copilot Studio, I get to this place. So you've all seen this is the usual guidance from Microsoft. Click on download PDF. It downloads everything from here. So this is about 1,000 pages. Everything you saw is in one neat PDF file. Now you can read this when you're traveling. But what I often also do, I use this PDF with a large language model with Gen AI. And then I can ask questions, or I can ask it to make questions to me. Provide me 10 questions on Copilot licensing, level 100. It will give me sample questions that I can use. So you can utilize this with ChatGPT, Azure AI Foundry, within Copilot Studio when you index this one. So this is a small little neat trick that I use with myself to get all the wisdom, all the knowledge in one place. And then I can play around with that information. And do identify your preferred learning method. For experts, you have to tackle the base exams, then you sort of know how it goes, and you need hands-on experience. For PL 600, the Power Platform Architect, you probably need hands-on experience in order to pass that one. For PL 200, you can just learn the theory and do it. But PL 600 has different aspects on a lot of things. How would you do something? And if you've never done that, you wouldn't really have that sort of orientation point to choose from which way to go. For mastery, skim the GitHub labs. You already know how to do this. So for me, I have a look at the GitHub labs. I download all the content. I skim through the PDF file. It's much faster than clicking through on the website and sort of getting lost with everything. And do your own labs. So for Power Platform again, do a lab on something with Dataverse as an example. Can you really build that yourself? Not spending endless amounts of time on that one, but allocate 2 hours, let me build a lab on this one. Then you will find those challenges, those problems, those things that do not work. And that helps you in mastering the whole topic, not just strictly on those topics that the exam is asking you to do. A couple of resources, and you will get a copy of the slides as well, so you can get the links from here, definitely. So the lab links for all of these, plus all of the certifications. I've also written, I realized about 5 years ago, a lot of my thoughts on how to pass the exam. So everything I've talked about today, very relevant, but within this blog article, the last link, you will also find a little bit more theory, a little bit more considerations on some of the additional tools you might be wanting to use. But you'll get a copy of the slides, so you get all of these links from there. Last but not least, I hope to see many of you in Vienna this June. I will be there for sure. Come say hi if you happen to see me. Let's talk about certifications. Let's talk about Power Platform as well. With this, I think we've covered everything. Feel free to get connected with me on LinkedIn. There's the link for that one. Sean, did we have any open questions left?
Yeah, there's a good few, and I don't know we'll get through them all, but we'll get through as many you can. Yes, thank you, Yossi, for a great presentation. So we'll now get into the questions and answers part. So the first question we have is, the 1-month trial sandbox environments are no longer available on the developer program. In my own case, both my work and university accounts didn't allow me to access Power Platforms. Do you know of any other way to access Power Platforms in order to practice for the exam?
That's a good question and very valid. I don't know of any sort of good trickery that would allow you to get a free tenant that will last over 30 days. So typically when you attend classroom trainings, they provide something for you. What I normally do is I spin up a new tenant and I buy whatever is the cheapest license for there. Just one license, you don't need anything else. So you don't need to go with the most premium licenses, just something from Microsoft 365 to give you the basic capabilities. So that would probably be the E1 license, which I think is about €5 a month. So I would simply invest on that one first. And then when you hit a blocker, oh, I cannot do something, then you typically can enable additional trial licenses on a valid commercial license.
Perfect. So the next question there is, do you know if there are any plans to reintroduce the instructor-led training via the ESI platform for the Power Platform courses, PL200/PL400/PL600?
I'm not aware of plans, but at the same time, with ESI, I'm also not super deep into that right now. I'm happy to look into that. So whoever asked the question, just ping me on LinkedIn, send me a private message, and I'm happy to dig out the status for you.
Perfect. So the next question there is, for being a citizen developer, I'm considering doing PL900 and then PL200. Would you recommend other courses as well? And do you pass exams only with 100%, or is there a margin for error?
There's a margin for error. So for each exam, you have 1,000 points, and you have to get 700 or more. If you get 701, great, you passed. Nobody cares. If you got 990, it doesn't make a difference. If you get 600, super close, just do it again. For PL900 and PL200, great start. I would next look into either, let me just quickly scroll back to the slides in here. So once you've done PL200 and PL900, I would perhaps look into PL300 if Power BI is anything that would be of interest or in the horizon. Or alternatively, I would choose between PL500 if you have any intent on doing RPA, or starting to eye at PL600. But PL200, PL900, more than enough for citizen development related tasks. But at some point, you will bump into stuff in Azure, Microsoft 365, or security then it would be good to have a game plan, which one eventually maybe to do in the future.
Perfect. So this next question there is, what if I don't pass an exam? Do I have to pay for a new exam or do I have it free?
If you don't pass, you have to pay for a new exam. There are offers, typically with major Microsoft events, that if you don't pass, you perhaps get a free retry or a discounted retry, like for 50% off. But for now, if you don't pass, you pay for it again. And it's $125 in Europe and $165 in the US. Definitely not free. Yet at the same time, doing a couple of exams, let's say PL200, PL600, and an AZ104, for example. In total, it's less than €500, still a lot of money, but that essentially gives you all the base skills and everything you need to succeed in whatever career you set out to do in Power Platform. So in this context, I feel it's affordable over the long term if you really want to succeed working with Power Platform.
Perfect. That's all the time we have. But if people have questions, is it okay if they message you directly? You'll see.
Yes, definitely.
LinkedIn,
So feel free to message me directly. So my LinkedIn link is in here. Feel free to get connected, send me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions on this one. And whoever is planning on doing an exam, hopefully after today, you are more motivated for that one. Good luck. I trust that you will ace it.
Perfect. So on behalf of ESP's community, we'd like to extend a big thank you again, Yossi, for taking time out today to carry this webinar. Really appreciate it. So that's the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. Thanks again for all of you joining us today, and I hope you join us again soon. Take care.
Thank you.